I really hope that you can get as excited about different workflow automation systems as I do. And it's not because I'm just a terminal nerd that I get excited about good workflows. The payoff of coming up with a decent workflow, building out a new system, is compound interest on productivity. It saves you time and improves your accuracy every time one of your workflows gets executed. So let's get on the same page and make sure that we all know what we're talking about. Workflow automation is simply streamlining processes. It's finding repeating things that we do over and over again in our day-to-day work. Sometimes it's busy work, but these repeating processes that have a series of manual steps that we can replace with an automated system. We can find ways, if we can connect two different tools together and transfer the information from one tool to the other tool, that's a workflow automation. It means that we don't have to copy and paste or write something down and then go into a new application and enter that information. And every time we remove one of those steps of us opening or closing or copying and pasting, that is an efficiency which we gain. And if it's in a repeating process, we gain it each time we have to do that. And it can make a profound difference in your productivity and in your sense of well-being as we have to do repeating tasks over and over again. Often, this requires us to connect different data sources, to take this piece of information out of this application and make sure that it arrives in this position in this application and it's set up and primed to receive it. And we need to ensure that the right information appears in the appropriate area in the receiving application. And within bounds, that is essentially what workplace automation is. At least that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how do we find and how do we take advantage of and how do we identify the opportunities where we can utilize workflow automation. So I think that there are three classes of that we'll be talking about today. There's internal workflows, there's system-based, and then there's external workflows. And so what do I mean by internal workflows? That's often just within an app. Just within one app, as you get to know the different tools that you use better, you will recognize that there are certain automations within those tools that you can take advantage of, and you have to learn to use the tool. It can be as simple as a spreadsheet using a macro to calculate a column or to take the information that is the result of this column and then transfer it over into this other location. It can be as simple as a little macro inside of a tool. Or it can be a form that is outward facing, that collects information and then delivers it to the right place. All of those are automations. And you have to, as you build out each step of your business, you have to look for opportunities to take advantage of those workflows. Now, the second type is systems-based workflows, and that's what we're going to spend a lot more time talking about today, because you should be able to identify spreadsheet-based, macro-type automations and start to work with those yourself. But it takes a little bit more of an educated eye to recognize the automations that are built into your systems and recognize how they're going to be used. Now, sometimes in a systems-based one, we're not just talking about an application talking to itself or moving information from one area of that application to another, but different applications speaking to other applications. And we do that through something called APIs or through different connection services. APIs are the magic sauce. That's where you've put together a system where one application will actually speak to another application directly without going through an intermediary. And if we can set up those sorts of API level integrations, and I'll show you one, I'll be walking through an example, so this won't be a mystery in a moment. But if you can set up those integrations, that's where the fastest, most accurate, most effective type of automations can be put in place. But all applications don't speak to each other, so there's a translation service available, universal translation service like Zapier, which we will show you, and I will also walk through the process of connecting two services that don't have the API level or the native level of integration. So I'll be walking you through examples of all of those in a few moments. The other type of system of automation is when you're talking not to within your own applications, within your own collection of tools, but you're actually speaking to another company. You're speaking to another service on the outside, which you don't own that application. If you have your webinar tool, your registration tool connecting to your CRM, those are two tools that you own. That's an example of kind of that internal systems based. But if you have your webinar system talking to a payment system because people are paying for the registration of a webinar, then you have cross-company. You have external automations, which you can also have and will put in place. So those are kind of the three classes, at least, that we're going to touch on today. Now, how I plan to do this is by walking you through a real world process that we use here at Dottotech, because it touches on every one of the aspects, this one process. So I'm going to ask you to start with a blank canvas. Trust me that I will put all of these pieces together, and hopefully by the end you'll have a real solid picture of how an automation system, how we put it in place, and all of the different pieces of that particular system. So here is what we're going to create an automation for. Sorry, I'm going to cut in right now. As I was editing this video, you can tell I'm in my editing as opposed to recording attire. As I was editing this video, I realized that I could do a better job of explaining this process to you so I can give you a clear idea of the goals and objectives. So here is what happens. This is all based on people purchasing a course from us, one of our Foundational Fridays, which we do each and every week. So this is a repeating process that we do over and over again. Now, I need a series of things to happen, an automation to happen, when somebody purchases a course from us for Foundational Friday. And so once they purchase the course inside of Thinkific, we need to take that customer and direct them to a success page. And on the success page, they have to have all of the information so that they know that they've successfully purchased, and let them know what's coming. You're going to be receiving an email, add it to your calendar, etc. So that has to happen. Then the purchase notice, the notice that they've purchased, has to be sent to our CRM, to ActiveCampaign. And ActiveCampaign has to be notified that this person has purchased, so we can add information to that contact. That person then needs to be sent a follow-up email with the Thinkific login details for the replay and the resources, because there's going to be two stages when you purchase a course from us. The first is the live content delivery, and the second is the access to all of the replays. So the follow-up email has to give them access to the replays so they know where to come if they don't attend live, or if they do attend live so they can come back later. And that has to happen right away as soon as they've done their purchases. Those three things have to happen. Now, when ActiveCampaign receives that purchase notice, then ActiveCampaign, our CRM, has to add a tag to the customer so we can identify that contact as purchased, and they have to add them to the master list. So those are processes that have to happen each and every time. The reason it's important that they get that purchase tag is now we go to an external service, Zapier, and it's monitoring ActiveCampaign for the purchase tag. And when that happens, then Zapier has to create a new registration in our webinar tool inside of Demio to make sure that they can attend the live training. And we want this to be an automated process. This automation wants to stop us from having to do multiple steps manually. So we don't want the customer to have to manually register either. So instead we will trust Zapier to do that. When Zapier registers the customer inside of Demio, then Demio has to send the contact an email with the registration information so that they can log in to watch the webinar live. Send them a last minute reminder we send for each of our webinars, because people tend to forget or they go searching for the registration information. It's good to just have an email come in with it. And then send the replay notice as well afterwards so that they can view the replay should they choose to. And then once ActiveCampaign is sent or queued up to send those emails to the contact, it then lets ActiveCampaign know that this contact is registered, so that it gives us a check mark that it's been completed, that they have all of the things that they need. So when we look in ActiveCampaign, we can see that they purchased and that they're registered for the webinar. So each one of these steps then eliminates a manual process that could have been required as a person registers for one of our tutorials. So that's the system that we have in place. But now we have to put all of the pieces in, and I'll return to my original demo for that. So what I've done is I've created a template. Now I'm gonna show you. This is what we actually work from each week. This is the template that I use, the form that I use, so that all of the information appears in the right place and I don't miss any steps, because some days when I'm creating this, I feel great and my mind is clear and I don't have a bunch of external things happening and I'm able to very easily just flow through it just with my own memory. Other times I forget. I go, well, how do I do this step of the process? Because as you'll see, some of you might get a little bit lost as we go through it, but that's why the replay is amazing. So this, I'll share with you now, step by step, how we create this automated process, which earns us money and saves us time each and every week. This is the form. So this starts with a blank form, and it's going to be for this week's Foundational Friday, creating a short form video. So the very first thing that I do before everything else is I create 2 tags. I create a registration tag and a purchase tag. The tags are for ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign is our CRM, and I need to be able to identify who's purchased the course and who attended the tutorial, because they're not the same groups of people. Some people purchase it separately and actually pay $10 to purchase it. Others are members of our community. They don't have to purchase it in advance. They get to just register for it. So I need 2 different tags. One for the people who aren't members of the community that purchased it from the outside and have the rights to be able to view it. And then for everybody that's members of the community so that they can see it as well. But I want to know who raised their hand and was interested. So all I do is I go into ActiveCampaign. Inside of ActiveCampaign, you create a new tag by going into your contact menu. And there inside of contacts, there is a place here to create tags right there. And all I do is I copy and paste the tags from here. I just take those 2 and I go into ActiveCampaign. I paste those tags in here and I add them. And then I've got those tags available to me to use, which we'll be using as we go through the process. So it has begun. We have started our process. Now I go back into my master document and it asks the date. I put the date information in. I copy and paste the description so that we can do all of our social marketing of it. Now, every time in this particular form, every time I have an action that I have to do as part of the automation, that's in black. And all of the data is in white, is in the white fields. So the next thing I need to do is I need to build the webinar in Demio. So let's go over into Demio, which is our software which we use for delivering the webinars. We're in Demio right now, and let's show you how we go about adding a new event. So I create a new standard event, and I'm going to call this sample webinar. And I go and I set a date and a time for that webinar, scheduling it. I'll just move it. I'll just put it to another day here. There we go. Add it. And then we have our first integration. And here is where that happens. I go into the customize menu, and down here I add integrations. Let me go back to the mind map for a moment. When we have API level integration, when one application can talk to another application, there's 2 different ways that the conversation can occur. One application can push and publish information into the other application. So basically making a phone call to them and saying, this is happening, please pay attention. Or one of the applications can pull the information. It can say, hey, I've got this happening. Can I please get this information from your database or from within your organization? This first example that we're going to see is where we pull, basically where we subscribe to information coming from another service. So if we go back here into our webinar and I choose ActiveCampaign here and I turn on the ActiveCampaign integration, what happens is ActiveCampaign will then say, when somebody registers for this webinar, what information do we want to apply to that particular contact inside of ActiveCampaign? That's the process. And I created those tags, and these are the number of tags we have. So you can see that there are literally thousands of them that we've used over the years. And right down here, it's nice. It publishes right at the bottom in this particular case. I'm going to say they have signed up for short form videos, and they have, there it is, action, short form video. There it is. The action is where they've registered. So I say, if they've done this, they've registered for it. I want them to put the action tag on it, saying that they have registered for this short form video tutorial. So everybody who registers in Demio gets this, but that's the process. So we can see the first integration, the first automation happening, where when they've signed up, they now get this, they get registered. A part of Demio as well is when somebody is registered, I've previously set up in my profile that they get an email with the registration information and they get a reminder email. We've pre-set up all of those different processes, but that's part of the automation sequence. So those are the things I don't have to worry about. As soon as you've signed up for the webinar, I know you're going to get the registration email, you're going to get the reminder email. Those are all part of the automation, which we've set up. So they're all in place. Let's take a look at what the next step is in the process. And if we go back to the master document, once I've built the webinar in Demio, I copy and paste, I'm going to take the Demio registration link. And what we do is, once it's been created, is I go here into the sharing menu and I take this registration link and I put it in so that we can then populate it into whatever different pages as we go along. So by following a format that I've got here, this format that I've got in this template, I make sure that I don't miss any steps and I don't have to go back. When I need the registration page for Demio, I just go here. I don't have to go into Demio. I can just pull it off of the page. So that's part of the kind of the automated system and the process that we've put in place. So then I've integrated, I connect it to the Action Foundational Friday tag. We just saw me do that. So the next thing that we do is we have to build the actual Thinkific course itself. And that creates a custom landing page. And Thinkific, which is our learning management tool, also acts as our payment processor or as our shopping cart tool in this particular case. So let's go over. And here I'm in the management console here inside of Thinkific, and I can create a new course here inside of Thinkific. Now I'm going to just show you the existing course rather than create a new one because we've already populated all of the information into it. But if we take a look back here, it tells me what I want to do is I want to create the course, and then after purchase, I want to send them to a custom landing page using this content. So let me show you what happens when we create a new course. Back into the course here itself. When I create a new course, where we can go into the course curriculum, which will later on contain the replay of the video and all of the resources. In the settings area, we set up all of the descriptions. So this is the public facing information for the course. Give the course a name. The course has a URL. I can choose whether it's hidden or private, or it hasn't been published yet, so it would be in draft mode as we start. Important here is I go into the course image and description, and I copy and paste from that spreadsheet, from the document, the description, and I create in Canva the graphic. And so I've got a standard template that I use in Canva. I export that, I upload it here so that now we've got the graphic in place. And then I go into the pricing module and I set the price. I create a one-time payment. I then go in, and after I've set up the payment, I go to after purchase, because when somebody registers, we need to start an automated process where they are informed that their registration is successful, and also begin the whole process of them being registered into Thinkific. I hope that makes sense. Sorry, I didn't make sense because I said Thinkific. When they are registered into Demio, they're registered into the webinar. Don't worry, you're going to be able to watch the replay here and go through this step by step again, because I know it can be a little bit confusing, but that's the nature of automated systems like this, is they manage what can be quite complicated processes for us and make it, even though this doesn't look easy, this is pretty easy for me to do because I've got the directions happening each step of the way. So we now, let's see, where are we in the process? Oh, we're into the after purchase. So what I've done is I create in the after purchase. So after somebody's purchased, Thinkific says, what do you want me to do after they've clicked on the purchase button? I want to take you to a thank you page, and I'm putting this custom copy in the thank you page, just telling people what's upcoming. And I wrote that information here, so I just copy and paste it. Please check your email for the webinar link, because we're going to finish off the process to make sure that they're sent that particular webinar information. So we have that in place, and we can get the registration link, the purchase link. And if we take a look at what that looks like, it looks like this. So this is the page which is automatically created where we send people who want to attend the webinar and purchase it. And they can have all of the payment. This has automatically been integrated with our payment processor. So the things are starting to fall into place. We've got the webinar ready to go now. It's been scheduled. We have the landing page in place with the description. We have the pricing information, and we've been able to identify people who've registered for the webinar in our CRM. So all of our pieces of the automation are starting to fall into place. Once I've set up the custom landing page, now we have to create the event inside of ActiveCampaign so that inside of Thinkific, so that ActiveCampaign can recognize what's happened. Now, do you remember just a few moments ago, I said there's two different types of integrations that happen at API level. One of them is the pull integration, which happened inside of Demio, where inside of Demio, I was able to look at the list of tags that are inside of ActiveCampaign and choose the tag that I wanted to apply when somebody registered for the webinar. This is the mirror image of that. Now, inside of Thinkific, I want to push information through to ActiveCampaign to tell ActiveCampaign that someone has published, because this starts an active process happening. So the first thing that I need to, or not the first thing, the next thing I need to do is inside of inside of Thinkific, after I've created this course, saved it and published it, I'm going to close this and I'm going to go in to my apps area where I've got the API integration that's set up with ActiveCampaign. Now, the first time you set this up, it's a little bit of a complicated process where you copy, it's not that complicated, but you copy API keys, which are basically the passwords that allow one application to have permission to talk to another application that you own. So this is a application level integration that is going to happen automatically. Now, when we've got that, in order to do that, we actually have to publish we have to publish the event. We scroll down here and we can see that we've got these different triggers. They'll ultimately be triggers that start the process. So ActiveCampaign can receive information from Thinkific of new signups, new orders, new enrollments, courses being completed. And when you've created a new course, you click here, create events. And what this does is it publishes the entire list of events that are available in Thinkific through to ActiveCampaign. So when we go into ActiveCampaign, we can then start to set up the process of the automatic registration for the webinar and identifying that people have indeed purchased this particular course. All right, so we go here into automations. The automation area is a little bit of magic inside of ActiveCampaign. So this is, you can actually see that this is the one where I create an automation for the purchase of the course that's coming up. But if I was starting from scratch, I would create a new automation. And here there are a series of recipes that do a lot of the common processes that you might want to set up. And we see external integrations where it'll talk to LinkedIn, it'll talk to Facebook. All of these, you can set up automations where, based on what tagging and what happens with your customer inside of ActiveCampaign, you can create an event happening outside of ActiveCampaign and these other applications. And that's what we're going to do right now, but we're going to start from scratch. When we start from scratch, we will see the opportunities we have for creating a trigger. Every one of these automation pieces starts with what's called a trigger. So something has to happen, an event has to happen that causes the following sequence to occur. And these are the sequences that you can create inside of ActiveCampaign. There's so many. We can tie them into other applications. And the more applications we attach by API, the more options you'll have here. So you can see that I have a limited number. But the one that I want in this particular case is I want to use event as recorded. Now, event is a generic term for something happened in one of our partner apps, which means that we need to do something here inside of ActiveCampaign. And when I select event as recorded, it's tied to Thinkific. I go into the events here, and here, just like the tags, there are thousands of events, because every time I've got an event inside of Thinkific, people enrolled in a course, people completed a course, it's been published through here. Now, this is one area that I don't love how ActiveCampaign works, because they don't allow us to type in to jump directly to the event itself. But if I scroll down, because I've used it alphabetically, if I scroll down to our product purchase, and it'll be FF70, and I can see right here, just a few more, there it is, product purchased FF70. So that is, the product is purchased inside of Thinkific, And when that happens, then I want you to do this process. So the last time that we did this in Demio pulled the information out of ActiveCampaign in order to create the integration. In this case, ActiveCampaign has had the information pushed to it from Thinkific because the trigger has to happen automatically. That's why it has to be pushed and not pulled in this particular case. So when that happens, we go in and we add a tag. And the tag we add is going to be that purchase tag. And this dialog box, I don't know why one dialog box doesn't allow us to type in and the other one does, but in this particular case, I can type in purchase FF70 and it should pop up. There it is, short form video. So now I can apply this tag for purchase short form video. I can save it. And if we take a look, if we go back into all of our automations, you can see the one that's live. I'm not going to set this one live because we already have this one live. And so when somebody purchases inside of Thinkific, then we add the tag. That's the trigger. We add the tag purchase that they've purchased this, and we also add them to a list, a master list that we have of everybody who's ever attended Foundational Friday. That is these steps here. You see right here? That's all of those different steps that we have to do inside of ActiveCampaign. Okay, we're getting there. We've set up our API integration between Demio, Thinkific, and ActiveCampaign, but we have one more step to happen. When somebody purchases inside of Thinkific, I need them to be registered inside of Demio so that they get all of the registration information and that they attend the actual webinar itself. So in that particular case, we have to, again, use the same sequence, a trigger, an event, an action, but we don't have API integration. We're not doing that inside of the application itself. Instead, we are going to do that inside of a external tool, in this particular case, Zapier. And what Zapier will do is it will allow us to create the registration and create an automated system that will do it for us. And let me show you how that comes together. I'm going to create a new Zap. And the reason I'm going to walk this through from the beginning is so you can understand the depth of different things that you can do inside of Zapier. Zapier has literally hundreds of different applications that will allow you to create these Zaps. And in this particular case, I'm going to start with the trigger. Now, what's the trigger going to be? The trigger is going to be the fact that they purchased the course. And how I identify that they purchased the course is I go into ActiveCampaign and I say choose an event. And I'm going to say the event is a tag is added to the contact, because when they purchase, we get the purchase tag, right? So what I can do is I can continue with that. And it says the event value is going to be a tag is added to a contact, and the tag is going to be purchase FF70. And there it is right there. If they purchase FF70 short form video, then I continue. We test that and make sure that it can talk to the application correctly. The next thing is we want to find our webinar software. Now I've got Demio set up here. So when I go into Demio, type it in, there's Demio. So Demio is going to have a limited number of options inside of Zapier because Demio is a webinar tool. So when we choose the event, it's create a registration for a webinar. So when that tag, the purchase tag is added, then I want to create the registration for the webinar. And the action is going to be, I choose the webinar. And in this particular case, it would be the sample webinar that we've been setting up, but I would choose the name of the webinar. And then I put in the contact's first name. I decide what information I want to put in here. And then I put in their email address. And I continue, and then it will send a test through. So what it's actually going to do is it's going to make sure that everything is working properly, tested successfully, and we can go in. We can actually go in here, we can check. If we go in and take a look at our sample webinar here in Demio, there should be a single registration for it. Yeah, there it is right there. Once this is completed, you can publish this and you can give it a name. Now, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back, roster here. You can see that the registration for the real one, which is happening this week, is up and it's active and it is running. And if we go take a look at the webinar itself inside of Zapier, you can see that it's working, because if I go here, there won't be a lot of registrations for it yet because we haven't really started to promote it, but we can see that 8 people have registered and they've all gone through this process. We now have an automation system in place that when somebody purchases a course, each step of the way of them being registered inside of ActiveCampaign, identified inside of ActiveCampaign, a registration created inside of Demio, a follow-up series of follow-up emails come out of Demio to let the people know. All of those pieces are in place. So I think we've now, when you stop and once you can get past the overwhelm of me just basically feeding you with a fire hose how these systems work, I think that you now start to recognize that you have automation systems inside of your applications, systems that talk to each other across applications. And when that isn't in place, you have an application that will allow you to tie 2 different applications together, all to do these things: to streamline a process, to remove multiple steps, to connect our different data sources, and ensure that the right information is recorded into the appropriate area. Now, before, and I know we're going long, but before we wrap things up, some tips. Always look for the path of least resistance. Look for the API integrations first before you start adding Zapier. Do it in as few steps as possible. This process that I put in place took me, trial and error took me, I don't know, this is maybe the 4th version of this particular system. When this system was first built, it would take me over an hour to build the course, to build each module. Now, it's still a heavy investment in time, but inside of about 20 minutes, I can build the entire process because I've got it all documented and it's repeating. I know exactly where I'm going and I know what each step is. So over time, you will get better at it as you do it. Always look for the integrated option, less moving parts. And you saw, I hope, one of the most valuable pieces of today's tutorial is how valuable making notes, giving yourself instructions on the process so that you don't miss a step. It's terrible having to go back and reverse engineer to find out where something broke. And I've done that in the past. I've built systems where I didn't properly document it, and then I've had to go back and look at it and say, why did I choose that? And basically relearn it because we managed to forget. So make sure that you make notes all the way along the way. And with that, let's go with what little time we have to our Q&A.